Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Jimmy Rants, and it's that time of the week, you guys, where I get the beautiful, the lovely, the talented one. You know her as Christine Moore. She is a nutritional therapy practitioner, which is pretty darn cool being an NTP, right?
It is.
It makes her all nerdy. She likes to comment on stuff about nutrition.
I was a nerd before NTP stuff, so...
It was so funny because she and I used to do this show called Living La Vida Low Carb on YouTube. And this was way back in the day when I first started, even before I had a podcast. And Christine would get on there and she would hear me, blah, 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 gluconeogenesis, blah, 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 diet, blah, 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 ketogenic, blah, blah. And now she puts words in front of me that I go, what did you just say? So yes, we are here. This is the one time of the week that Christine or Wiener, all of you that are here on YouTube, you will get to see her once a week on my Jimmy Rant. So we do a crossover episode for the Nutritional Pearls podcast, which airs on Mondays. And I'm thinking we need to close that front door. Can you go do that real quick?
Yep.
So yeah, we're listening, or you're listening, you're watching Jimmy Rants. So go on to jimmyrants.com. We've been doing this show for a little while now, for about 6 months, 260 something episodes and counting here on YouTube, and Instagram Live is where we've been starting the show, but they've been giving me some trouble lately. So we've now shifted the show, Jimmy Rants, over to the nutritional, YouTube Live to do the Nutritional Pearls podcast and to do all of the episodes here. So thank you guys for being here. Definitely, somebody told me to remind people to hit the bubble that will send you alerts. Ring the bell, hit the bell. So I'm reminding you, hit the bell so you'll get all the alerts anytime I go live, which Jimmy Rants fans will know that that's twice a day. So jimmyrants.com is the website. Today's Jimmy Rants, Christine and I wanted for our Jimmy Rants Nutritional Pearls podcast crossover episode to respond to something that happened this week. So those of you that pay attention in the nutritional health space, you'll know that the Joe Rogan Experience podcast has been doing a whole lot of information about health and diet. Joe Rogan actually has started embracing a lot of the ketogenic message. And so he's had on various people, Dominique D'Agostino, he's had on Gary Taubes by himself. He's had various experts on. Well, when Gary Taubes, who is very well known in the low carb world for writing the book Good Calories, Bad Calories, Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, and then The Case for Sugar, when he was on Joe Rogan's show, I want to say it was like late last year, Joe Rogan got an email from this guy named Taubes-Guyenet. Taubes-Guyenet is a researcher who has been in the health space. When I first met Stefan, he was in the paleo world, and the rift between Gary Taubes and Taubes-Guyenet goes back to the paleo. In fact, the very first paleo conference was called the Ancestral Health Symposium. You and I were both there at UCLA.
Yep.
And that was in 2011. And Stefan had just presented his information about his theory of food reward, that the reason we get obese, his theory is because we have foods that are highly, highly palatable, and it's the palatability that affects the brain chemistry, and it's the brain chemistry that then kicks in, making you want to eat more and more food. That's his theory. So Gary Taubes, who is of the hormone hypothesis theory, that insulin is at the root cause of why people get fat, he asked Stefan a question about, well, what about this group and what about that group? They don't fit your model. And they had kind of an interesting tit for tat. So that is the historical context for when they did their debate this week on Joe Rogan. Now, who watched that 3 hours of the debate?
I can't get that 3 hours back.
Christine and I, for you guys, we sat through all 3 hours. And we want to give you some commentary here today on the Nutritional Pearls podcast to kind of give you some context about what was said, how it was said, what we think about things that were said on both sides. So you want to start, since this was your idea,
Sure.
wanting to talk about this. So
Sure.
what was your initial thought when you heard these two were going to debate?
I was like, oh, this is really going to be interesting.
Right.
Just knowing their history and, you know, in all honesty, listening to the podcast that just happened, it was very hard to listen to Taubes-Guyenet talk just because of how disrespectful he was.
That was the most
And
disappointing.
I understand that it kind of all started back in 2011,
Right.
but Stephen should have been the bigger guy and treated Gary with a little bit more respect than he did. It made it very hard for me to sit there and listen to his side of things because of the way that he was acting like a little spoiled brat.
Well, and to me, this is part of the problem with the nutritional health space. It ends up becoming a pissing match, so to speak. Oh, no, I have the theory that ends all theories, that explains obesity and disease, and it's the insulin hypothesis. Oh, no, 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 you're all wrong. I have the theory to end all theories when it comes to obesity and disease. It's food reward, and if we just change the kind of food that mixes fat and protein, or fat and carbohydrate together, that makes it highly palatable, that's Taubes-Guyenet's position, then we would solve all the obesity problems in the world. And what you and I, as we were sitting there listening to it, she kept going, whoa, I got a comment. So what you and I kept coming to the conclusion of is, why does it have to be a tit-for-tat pissing match?
Yeah.
Why can't it be a little bit of truth from both?
So, yeah, so here's my thinking. When Stefan was talking about the brain and how he thought that was the culprit in obesity, I thought about several things. First of all, I thought about, you have all these skinny people out there that
We hate you, by the way.
that are eating these highly palatable foods,
Right.
yet they don't gain any weight.
Oh,
What's going on
Yeah.
with them?
Yeah.
I used to be that way. I used to be stick thin and eating whatever I wanted.
Well, and what about the flip side of that? What about people that have lymphedema?
Yeah.
And they've got these huge deposits of fat on their body that have nothing to do with the nutrition that
Right.
they've eaten. They could eat
Right.
nothing, and that lymphedema still shows up as fatty deposits. So,
Well, I'm thinking about you too.
Yeah.
You eat a very clean diet, and yet you're still struggling with some extra weight. And so there's other things going on. We are very highly individualized. Here's one thing that I thought of too. In the Egyptians long ago, they were eating, they didn't have highly palatable foods, and they were eating real whole foods, the grains and stuff like that. Yeah, they were, the grains then were different, but yet there were signs of obesity and
Heart disease
and things like that with them, without these highly processed foods that we have today from these big companies. So there's something else going on. And then I thought about Pottinger's cat study. So part of the study, well, let me just give you a
Explain
little.
what Pottinger's cat is.
Give you a little, yeah. So Francis Pottinger.
You're going to hate Pottinger, by the way. I'm just kidding.
Francis Pottinger, he took I think it was 900 cats. And it was a total of 900 cats,
We have
including their
4.
offspring. So
Yeah.
you're talking about, several
Over generations, right.
So part of the study involved him feeding one group raw meat and raw milk and some cod liver oil, and then the other group he fed cooked meat, raw milk and cod liver oil, and he wanted to show the differences that the cooked meat led to more disease in cats. But then another arm of the study, he gave these cats different types of milk. So one group he gave the raw, one group he gave the whole milk, another one skim milk, and then another one sweetened condensed milk. So what the study showed was that the group that had the sweetened condensed milk showed the greatest signs
obesity.
of disease.
Right.
And then once Pottinger put those cats back on their native or
How long
traditional
did it take?
diet, it took 4 generations.
4 generations.
For the offspring to become healthy
Meaning
again.
that there was some genetic predisposition for obesity and disease that happened in those next 3 generations that no matter how good they ate, they weren't going to overcome.
I think part of Stefan's proposal was that, oh, well, you stop eating these things and these things automatically go away. No.
Without taking to effect the damage that might have been done from generations back.
Right.
What you're saying.
And so I think when he wasn't giving those cats the highly palatable foods, as far as what he thinks is highly palatable is the fat, the sugar, and help me out here.
Well, fat and carbs combination.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
And salt.
But the problem, and salt, but the problem with a lot of the highly palatable foods, let's just call it's crappy garbage, it's the junk food, is they have the worst of the worst offender in carbohydrates, refined sugars and refined grains. The worst of the worst in fat. It's usually the vegetable oils and highly processed, hydrogenized oils and that kind of thing. So you combine 2 very bad elements and you smush them together, and then you put all kind of additives in there that make them highly addictive. Of course, they're going to be a problem. But that fits both the insulin theory and the food reward theory.
Yeah.
So in Stefan's world, if someone eats a sweet potato, they should not have a negative response in their blood sugar.
I can tell you I do.
And yeah, you and I both do. So it is fascinating that the explanation that people like Taubes-Guyenet, who is a brilliant researcher, but he's very dug in to his theory, to the point that I think if he acknowledged, okay, yeah, there's some people that have insulin resistance, that even those real whole food, non-palatable carbohydrate foods still have a bad response from those.
Yeah, I don't think he's taking into consideration the bio-individuality of everybody either. And just knowing what I know about the basic biochemistry and anatomy and physiology, how the body responds to things, it is the sugar to me. It is the sugar that causes the problem. So it's a combination of both, I think. So you have the sugar.
Is the sugar's impact on endocrine? Is that what you're saying? The endocrine system?
Yeah.
And specifically blood sugar, and if it gets wonky, all the downregulation effects that it presents in the form of disease?
Yeah, so I think that the sugar messes with the endocrine system. You can't get your blood sugar regulated. And until you get your blood sugar regulated, there's no hope in balancing your other hormones.
Yeah, blood sugar doesn't even come into account with the food reward, highly palatable theory. And see, this is where I think if Stefan would have stepped that direction and said, hey, look, you want to try a sweet potato, test your blood sugar, test your insulin response. After having that, that will tell the tale. But I think Gary also made some mistakes as well. Both were a bit pompous and full of themselves.
You can get so focused on your theory that you totally either purposefully or not purposefully just neglect other factors.
Well, and I think Gary could have put an olive branch out to Stefan. He kept calling him the wrong name. Stefan. Well, he used every variation except for Stefan. I'm like, how hard is it to say Taubes-Guyenet? Anyway, that's an aside. Go listen to the Joe Rogan Experience. You'll know what we're talking about. If you're just joining us, we are doing our weekly crossover episode of Jimmy Rants with the Nutritional Pearls podcast, and we're talking about the big debate that happened this past week on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast between Gary Taubes, New York Times bestselling author of Good Calories, Bad Calories, Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, as well as The Case for Sugar. And his debate opponent was Taubes-Guyenet. He is a PhD and has this theory about food reward. He's also written a book called The Hungry Brain. So the two kind of went off, but where we were going with this is Stefan needed to meet Gary a little bit in his direction and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if it is the insulin, then let's test insulin. Let's test blood sugar, even after eating a real whole food based carbohydrate like a sweet potato. But I think Gary could have met
Mm-hmm.
Stefan,
Yep.
and here's the thing, and have it fit the hormone hypothesis. That's the funny thing to
Mm-hmm.
me is a lot of what Stefan was sharing about was brain chemistry that causes you to eat more. I think that the fat and the carbohydrates that you would consume that would be that highly palatable food, the reason it impacts your brain is because of the hormone effects. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Um, yeah, it's kind of